In this video, we're going to be working with converting decimals to fractions. Here we have a decimal written as 0.25. I've converted it into a fraction that's 25 over 100. And of course, we always reduce our fractions, and this fraction reduces to 1/4. You will recognize that 1/4 is also known as 1/4. And if we look back at the decimal, if we talk about this decimal as far as money, we have 25 cents or we have a quarter. So you can see that we've converted this decimal into this fraction. The reason we do that is because if we have to compare different rational numbers written as either decimals or fractions, if they're written in the same form, then we can more easily compare them. All right, so let's look at some notes here. Here are some keys when converting decimals to fractions. First of all, you need to know your decimal place values. And then we're going to use the place value of the last decimal as the denominator of the fraction. Remember, denominator means the number in the bottom. We have the numerator at the top and the denominator in the bottom. So the last decimal place value will be written as the denominator. Let's go ahead and take a look at place values for decimals. I've written, just kind of picked a random decimal, 45.2548. If we look at this 2 right here, that's the first decimal, that's in the tens place. If we look at the 5, or the second decimal, it is in the hundredths place. The 4, or the third decimal, is in the thousandths place. And the 8, or the fourth decimal, is in the 10,000ths place. So we have 10,000, 1,000, 110, and these are the numbers that we will put in the denominator of the fraction in order to write the decimal as a fraction. Let's look at some examples, and let's try to look at these one at a time. Example A has a fraction of 0.6. Of course, the 6 is the last decimal because it's the only decimal, and it is in the tens place. So we write the number 6 over 10, and that is our fraction. Now, we could say 6/10, but we could also reduce it, and we need to reduce it, and we'll call it 3/5. So 0.6 is known as 3/5 as well as 6/10. Let's look at example B. Here we have a decimal 0.36. The 6 is in the hundredths place. So this decimal is called 36 hundredths, and it's written as a fraction, 36 over 100. Of course, we're going to reduce this. The way you reduce, of course, is to find the greatest common factor. And sometimes that's hard to do when the numbers are larger. If the numbers are both even, you can simply divide by 2. To start by dividing by 2, 36 divided by 2 is 18. 100 divided by 2 is 50. Now again, both of these numbers are still even, so they certainly could be reduced again. We'll divide by 2 again. 18 divided by 2 is 9, and 50 divided by 2 is 25. This is in the simplest form, so the fraction is 9/25. And then our final example, 0.125. The 5 is in the thousandths place. So we actually will write 125 over 1,000, and then we will begin to reduce. The greatest common factor, or maybe a common factor that we could pick out real quick, is going to be 25. So we're going to divide both sides by 25. 125 divided by 25 is 5, and 1,000 divided by 25 is 40. So 5/40. But this can still be reduced because 5 will actually go into 40. So we're going to divide by 5. And 5 divided by 5 is 1. And 40 divided by 5 is 8. It turns out that 125 is actually our greatest common factor. And 125 goes into 1,000 8 times. So the fraction is 1/8. Let's look at one more example. Example D, have a number written as 2.4. It is a decimal, but it also includes this whole number of 2, 2.4. What we're going to do is we're just going to start by separating the decimal here, 0.4. Again, the 4 is in the tenths place, so we could write 4 over 10, okay? It's a fraction, it's 2 and 4/10. But we can reduce that 4/10 by dividing by the greatest common factor, again, of 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 10 divided by 2 is 5, so that becomes 2/5. So our final fraction is 2 and 2/5. So 2.4 in the fraction form is 2 and 2/5. Okay, let's go ahead and look at some practice problems. Here we have 0.8. So we're going to go ahead and write the 8, and we'll write it over the place value. The 8 is in the tenths place, so the fraction is 8/10. However, we are going to reduce that. That is another one that we can divide by 2, is the greatest common factor. And the final answer becomes 8 divided by 2 is 4, and 10 divided by 2 is 5. So 0.8 or 8/10 is known as 4/5. All right, let's look at practice problem number 2, 0.05. Now, the 5 is in the 100ths place. We don't have to write the 0 in front of the 5. What we have is a value of 5, but it's 5 over 100 because 5 is in the 100ths place. Again, we are going to reduce, and the 5 is actually will go into 100, so we're going to divide both sides, or the top and the bottom, we're going to divide by 5. 5 goes into 5 one time, of course, and 100 divided by 5 is 20. So the decimal of 0.05 or 5/100ths as a fraction is 1/20th. Now let's look at our third practice problem. We have a number here, a decimal. It's negative 3.75. I've included the negative just to make sure you understand if you're changing a number from a decimal to a fraction and it's a negative, it stays a negative. Like, it doesn't change for any reason, okay, as far as when we're just converting it to a different form. But again, we're going to just work at first with the 0.75, okay? 75, and we're going to write that over the place value of the 5, which is 100. 75/100ths. But we're going to look to reduce that by using the greatest common factor. And the greatest common factor of 75 and 100 is 25. So we're going to divide the top and the bottom by 25. 75 divided by 25 is 3. 100 divided by 25 is 4 3/4. But let's not forget that we had a negative 3, so that will be negative 3 3/4. And that will be your fraction. This is how we say negative 3 3/4, and this is how it's written as a fraction. So again, this is how you change a decimal into a fraction. You need to know the place value of the last number and write the decimal over that place value as a fraction, and then reduce your fraction.